Brooklands Drive in Henley Brook. So we're a little bit different in that we're actually in the middle of the development area. We're not on the edges of it having it affecting everybody there. So we live there with a couple of horses. We bought our block in 2014 as we wanted a quiet life, semi-rural with a reasonable commute to our jobs. Now, if I just click the mouse, it'll go.
Forgive me.
Messed up already.
I'll put it on the video.
Okay, maybe I'll just, yeah. Alright, so we bought our block in 2014. We wanted a quiet, semi-rural lifestyle, an easy commute to our jobs, and we built everything from scratch. So we built our shed, water tank, fencing, and our house. We don't have septic. We have to use septic because we don't have sewage. We have to provide our own water because we've got a water tank. So we built everything from scratch ourselves. We moved in at the end of 2016. So these trees you can see here, no, go back down the trees. This is my favourite trees in the front paddock and one of my horses. We did our homework before we bought, so we were told by the council that there would be no development happening. At least not for at least 20 years, that there was no planning involved for it. So we only found out after we bought, so there's a whole other story about that, about countless meetings with the local council, rallies at Parliament House, meetings at a minister's office and the Department of Planning, because we weren't consulted about what was going to happen to our land that we were living on and whether we would stay. And in the planning, they actually planned a road through our house, our brand new house, and public open space right up to our back gutter. So it looked quite deliberate, like, we don't want you there, so we're going to plan on top of it. So, yeah, next slide. So this is where we are, the yellow patch there. That's our home, right in the middle. And you can see the POS 7, which is public open 7 POS. It impacts, and that's a road going through the middle of our house. Goes through right through our garage. So this is sort of from 2022, the more intense impact from the development started to happen. So the eastern end of our road, which is Brooklands Drive, that was closed and they started developing there. At that time, they put in a little limestone track as an exit for fire safety because obviously one side of the road was closed. Right across the road, so actually let's go to the next slide. So right across the road from us, they started knocking down trees, they started building, and you can see all the rubbish along the fence. I was collecting rubbish every second day, like filling a chart bag with rubbish every second day. Constant stream of it, because the developers and the builders don't care. The tradies actually drive past and just fling their empty beer bottles out the window as they go, and their KFC packets and all the rest of it. So I'm forever picking up their rubbish. I picked up wheelbarrow loads. So we're in the middle of this mess. So if you go to the next slide, that's a map there. So all those little coloured squares is where they've had road closures. And we're smack bang in the middle of that. And you can see there's a road closure, the blue in the middle, which clearly says June to October 2024. So in the middle of 2024, our road was closed again, pretty much right in front of us. And when we asked for council information about what was happening, we got that map, which showed all the road closures in our immediate area. But this wasn't just for the development, it's also to install a deep sewer, which would follow Brooklands Drive right around the entire front boundary of our property. So you can see that it was planned to be from June to October, so it'd be finished before summer. They didn't start work till September. The road was closed. They dug a series of enormous pits. They were big enough for those big digging machines to disappear. Like, you couldn't actually see the top of them. They progressed right along our front boundary. They went way over time, right through summer, so more than 6 months worth. So these pits had dewatering machines in them, running 24/7. Now the average, one of these machines, they're those big square things that you see in the pits, they each pump out about 750,000 litres of water a day, on average. That's an average one, not a big one. And each of those pits had at least 4. So you're thinking, you've got millions of litres of water being pulled out. Not only that, actually if you go to the next slide, you can see that's one of the pits. The trees in the background is sort of the eastern corner of our property. So that's one of the pits they had there. And you can see there's like 4 sets of machines there. The contractor did not use a filtration pond. at all. So when they were working on our street, that's this whole eastern end of our street, they didn't use a filtration pond, which you're supposed to use to get that water that comes from there to go back there. They actually were pumping the water into the stormwater system. So there was millions and millions and millions of litres of water every day for 6 months. I was really concerned about this. I thought, what is this? This can't be right. Why are people doing this? So I contacted the council and I was told, no, that's okay. I contacted the Department of Water and Environmental Regulation, which I'll now call DEWA, and I got the same answer. I wanted them to come and have a look and inspect it to say, okay, that's definitely right or wrong. Nobody ever came. And while this was happening, the air constantly stank of diesel. The noise was constant because it went 24/7. We could hear it at night when we were trying to sleep. It was just awful. So, next slide. The one with the green stripes on it. Yeah. So the Civil Works Company, they had a dirt track for their vehicles, for us and our neighbour, and this involved cutting the roots of the trees along our boundaries. So where those green stripes are, that's where they cut the roots to put in their little access track. And of course, when they did this, we had 10 fences everywhere. The rubbish truck couldn't find us. The mail couldn't find us. We were forever asking the council to come and empty our bins. Okay, next slide. Okay, this one is, I don't know if you can see it from here, but you see the black pipes. So they're coming out of the pit on the big left-hand photo, and there's pipes going up, and they're disappearing straight into the stormwater drain. So this is in December. Those pumps have been running for months. The groundwater that would normally seep through way downstream was being pulled through unnaturally, then being dumped somewhere else. Okay, the next slide. So this slide, this is our first trees to be affected by this happening. Our major impact was to our trees. So this is on the eastern end of our property where they first started having the pits. I started to notice the trees looking odd. I came home from work and thought, those trees don't look right. And I can see more light. They were changing colour, they were losing leaves. By the time we got into late December, when we started to get into summer, they started to go downhill very rapidly. They turned the pumps off over Christmas, which was interesting because for a couple of weeks, and that's when we believe the salt started to seep up as the groundwater tried to equalise. So next slide. Here's a close-up of what the leaves look like, and we're pretty sure that's salt affectation because it's like within a week it would just go like that. The first tree to start dying looked completely dead within a couple of weeks, and it progressed along our boundary, down Diane Place and up the western end of Brooklands Drive, so it wasn't just our property. We took samples of the water from a couple of the pits and had them analysed by Chem Centre. It was too salty in one and contaminated by diesel in the other. So next slide. And you can actually see that's the diesel sludge. Wonderful. So we had the trees, at this time we thought, okay, we need to investigate why this is happening. We had the trees checked for several diseases, including shot hole borer, and it was all negative. So we wrote to the council, we contacted the Civil Works Company, and they did start to water the trees with a truck, but it was inconsistent and intermittent. The Civil Works Company must have felt some sense of responsibility to provide the truck, and they got an arborist to do a report, and that arborist recommended 500 litres of potable water every tree, every second day, sea soil and soil wetter, fortnightly. Okay, next slide. So this is our property here in the middle, and you can see all the dead trees all following around Brooklands Drive there. They water them maybe twice a week, sometimes once. And we're talking about 45-degree days here. The water contractor had other commitments, so he was very inconsistent. And we ended up having to just dump the soil wetter at our front gate. We ended up doing it ourselves. When they finished the works by the end of March, we had more than 20 dead or dying trees, and they abruptly stopped watering the trees despite the council trying to get them to continue, so they did try. It was just out of sight, out of mind, this Civil Works Company. During this time we had multiple phone calls and meetings with the council and the developers. We always felt that our concerns were brushed aside. So slide 16, next one, that's it before and after. As you can see on the left, we had a full tree canopy going all around the edge of our property, and after there's these big gaps. And I must say also that you can see that we're just in the middle of all this happening. We've become the oasis for all the little critters that want to live where we live. So I've got quenders that live with us, all manner of birds that live with us. We've got a kangaroo that jumped in to escape the development, and she was trapped by all the temp fences. So she jumped in. She's actually been living with us for a year now, and she had a boyfriend kangaroo that would come to visit, and he'd jump in and jump out, and he's actually got squished on the road last week. Yeah, so this is the nature's consequences. We had little ponds across the road because it was all semi-rural. They got filled in even though there was turtles there. I'm not sure if they got moved, I doubt very much. So we were left with a sewer going past us that we're not connected to. Several trees, most of those more than 15 metres tall, they're really big. They're completely devoid of dead or dying. So we got our own arborist, and he did a thorough analysis, and we found out that trees have a lot of value. Their height and canopy increases their value. So there's a system called the Henley Brook system, which they use to value trees, and some of our trees were valued up to $90,000 per tree. So that's how much damage they did. So added up over 20 trees. Okay, slide. So this is my big favourite tree in the paddock next to the shed. You can see part of it just died within a week. It just went like that. And now I've just got a stick. Just one big giant stick. And those big giant sticks in the storms drop more big giant sticks. So the arborist's conclusion was the same as ours. Dewatering was a likely culprit, but cutting the roots and putting heavy objects on the root zone contributed to the damage to our property and the amenity of the entire eastern end of Brooklands Drive. So we decided we didn't want them to get away with it. We contacted a lawyer, and we started a freedom of information process, it's called FOI, when you get information from government, to get governments to count documents from the council and DWA, the Department of Water and Environmental Regulation. The documents from the council contain no paperwork or anything near our property or in the same time frame. So everything around us but nothing right in front of us, which was a bit odd. It was like there was a black hole. We had nothing that said the contractor had approval to close the road or dispose of the water into the stormwater system. So we drew a blank there. We noted during that time that 2 different people left that job in the city of Swan. Obviously didn't like working it, or doing that particular job anyway, because I'm sure at the time we thought we were on our own too, much like the Kellers, and I'm sure there were lots of other people putting in FOIs, and they're probably going, oh, something's going on here. So the next bit, the next slide, well, it is the next bit. This is the bit right on the corner of us. That white thing that you see in the middle is our internet. So they somehow managed to dig that out and we actually lost our internet 3 times during this whole process. Every time they dig a hole a bit further down the road, they cut through it. 3 times at least we lost our internet. It's unbelievable. So that's our property on the left there. We're sort of on 5 acres. And you can see that's the natural level of the groundwater there too in summer, I think. I can't think it's summertime. So DEWA took many months of delays for their FOI. We finally got the information. There was no evidence that the Civil Works Company had a licence to remove that much water. According to their regulations, you can only pump water without a licence for up to 30 days. So they were going for 6 months. So for the volume and time these pumps were running, they should have had one. There is a document that sets out acceptable practices for this situation. It's called the Water Quality Protection Note number 13. And the Civil Works Company, if you read that document, there's all these things set out. The company failed to follow any of those we could see. So the next slide. So this is what connects us to everybody else here. This is a result, I believe, or we believe, from that water being pumped into the stormwater. That's where it came out. So that road that you can see, the big road there, that's Park Street. So that's a big main road going through there. There's 3 or 4 semi-rural properties there, and they can't even use their paddocks. And we would say this to these guys there, and they're like, oh no, it's winter time. This is not winter, this is summer. It shouldn't be flooding like that. So they don't use a filtration ponds, and this millions and millions and millions of litres have been pumped into the stormwater. It's got to go somewhere. So while we were waiting for the FOI from DEWA, we did a lot of research ourselves, and we found many planning documents for the development, and these include the Henley Brook Local Structure Plan and the Local Water Management Strategy. They have guidelines for how you should manage groundwater, trees and private property. Essentially, you need to monitor it, private property should be protected, and if anything goes wrong, stop and find solutions. So the contractors don't follow these documents. I think one of the biggest problems that we have seen is there's a complete lack of responsibility and oversight from the worker on the ground to the supervisor, the council, state government. Nothing is checked, nothing is monitored. And an example of this is the workers, I sort of said, why are you pumping this water out now? Because I think I was sick of the noise or something, because they make horrible noises, these things too. And he goes, what? It's just the water in this hole here. He had no idea of how the water is connected, all connected. He just thought he was sucking water out of a bucket in the ground. So, next slide. So this is what happens now. So this is just one of the smaller branches, so that's come down on our fence. I've got horses in that paddock. So if I get a bigger one that falls on the fence and the horses get out, I'm going to be in trouble for them causing a car accident, probably. We were quoted $65,000 for a contractor to fix this problem that someone else did. The dead trees are a risk to the fences, they're a risk to the power line, we've got a power line running past us, which is also ironic because we've still got that power line there and everybody else has got underground. There's horses living in those paddocks and a kangaroo now. We've asked the council for help with this repeatedly and been repeatedly ignored. So, last slide. So this is the horses living, and that's the trees. This is probably last summer when they still had some dead leaves on them. They've now all completely blown off. Our end of Brooklands Drive is now ugly. I come home from work, it's ugly. It used to be pleasant, green, shady, welcoming, and it's now starkly lined with dead trees. And with every tree that's cleared, there is less evidence of what's been done to the groundwater. Just down the road from us, down Diane Place, there was a whole pile of dead trees like this. They just cleared those. So now nobody can see, and I think that's part of the issue with the groundwater. When the developers clear everything, you can't see the damage stuff it's doing on top of the ground. So my question is, where's the tree canopy protection? We're constantly being told we need tree canopy protection. Where is it? And where is the care for our environment?